Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks very much for joining us today. We're just having some audio and video issues regarding showing the PowerPoint slides. If you just bear with us a minute, that would be fantastic. Thank you. Just a quick reminder, we are having some technical difficulties at the moment with audio and video. My colleague has lost sound, who's trying to share screen. Bear with us, please. Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. If we could just confirm, first of all, please, if somebody could put in the chat whether or not you can hear me perfectly okay, and if you could see the initial slide in presenter view, it should say T Levels Management Administration preparing for the occupational specialism. So if somebody could type that into the questions, that would be fantastic. It's all good. Thanks, James. Much appreciated. So unfortunately, my colleague today is struggling to join with internet issues. We are all working from home in different parts of the country, so please do bear with us. However, we'll get cracking. So first things first, I'll do a bit of an introduction. So my name's Don Green, Technical Advisor at City and Guilds for Business Skills, of which Management and Admin falls under that category. I should be joined by Karen Egan, but unfortunately she is struggling to get on due to technical issues. Karen is a technical advisor for leadership management, and of course, as you'll all know, one of the occupational specialisms is, of course, team leadership management as well. So good to have Karen on board. So as per usual, what we're going to do today is have a quick look at the agenda. We're going to start with a bit of an overview where we're at, look at the three occupational specialisms in detail, or certainly look into them and give you a bit of an overview as to why, how you should start planning, delivering the assessment associated with the three, and resources, and then finally questions at the end. So there should be plenty of time at the end to answer some questions. As per usual, if we can't answer them all, what we'll do is we will respond via a frequently asked questions document and post that up onto our website. We do have a fair few of you online today, which is great to see. So just for those that haven't used the GoToWebinar platform before, there is a questions tab. If you can enter your questions there, then we will address them at the very end when we get time. But like I said, there should be plenty of time to address those questions. So for those of you on the call today, You probably will have all delivered the core this year already. This is a session for those who are currently in delivery. And of course, the core is slightly different to the occupational specialisms in the fact that, well, in a number of ways actually, but in the fact that it looks at concepts and theories and transferable core skills. Whereas the occupational specialisms is looking more about threshold competency and reaching that level. They're equally weighted, but what is slightly different is the grading. So you can see that in the core this year, the ESP, the Employer Set Project, and the 2 core theory exams have been graded A* to E, whereas the occupational specialism is slightly different. So the occupational specialism individually is graded as either pass, merit, distinction, and together they will form an overall grade of pass, merit, distinction, or distinction star. And we'll look at that table in a little bit because it has changed slightly. Now, the occupational specialism does have a strong link to the Employer Set Project in how it's released, worked through, being a controlled assessment window, controlled assessment environment, etc. And of course, you will be starting to deliver the occupational specialism from September. Now, onto those occupational specialisms. Of course, by now you will have chosen one or more than one occupational specialism in what you are going to deliver from September. I think the majority of providers this year have chosen one specialism to offer. Perhaps the slightly larger providers have offered 2, giving learners an opportunity to take their pick. And what we're seeing is generally team leadership and management and business support has been the most popular. Very much so, in fact, with a handful of centres choosing business improvement as their option. Some centres have chosen business improvement as a secondary OS as well. So all 3 have been selected by several centres, but the clear leaders, the clear favourites are team leadership and management and business support. And of course, in order to be successful, learners must complete both the core and the occupational specialism, as well as the industry placement, in order to be successful in the T level. Now, what we've got to point out here is that from September, you will start delivery. There are slightly different guided learning hours associated or attributed to the 3 different specialisms. So we just want to point this out at this stage. So the business improvement and business support have 595 guided learning hours attributed to them, whereas team leadership and management is slightly bigger. It's only by 25 guided learning hours, but still 620 guided learning hours has been given to team leadership and management. Now, you're obviously going to start delivering this as soon as possible from September. It's a short time scale in which to deliver your occupational specialism. You can actually start, or learners rather, can actually start the practical assessment from the 5th of February 2024. So the controlled assessment window does start from the 5th of February. And so for those that are on the ball, will notice there that that's considerably earlier than the Employer Set Project in year 1. So we will look at that and discuss that later on.
Hello, Dom. I am here now. I do apologise.
Wonderful. Thanks, Karen. Much appreciated. So I've done the intros, Karen. Karen obviously looks after leadership and management and has now managed to join us. So Karen, do you want to pick up from this particular slide?
Yes, happy to. Apologies, everyone. Just at 2 o'clock on the dot, everything disappeared from my screen, so apologies for that. Can you hear me okay, Dom? Just to make sure.
Absolutely.
It's all back. Okay. So we've used this slide in the past just to sort of say when you're doing the core, there are references to some of the occupational specialisms. So now that you're about to sort of embark on the occupational specialism, it's worth just sort of understanding that there has been a nod to some of the OSs, as we call them, during the core. So, you know, my particular area, team leadership, when you covered the areas around people and project and change management and business behaviours, the team leadership was embedded there. So obviously, the concept of team leadership will have already started to sort of perhaps manifest itself in the learners' brains. So it shouldn't all be new to them. So I'm going to have to do the next slide bit all the way through, Dom, I'm afraid, because I guess this is your set of slides. Yeah, okay. So I think when I joined, Dom was already mentioning that the dates are quite early for the assessment dates. So here we've just listed them specifically. So the window opens on the 5th of February through to the 17th of May for you to organise that 32-hour controlled assessment. So we release the live occupational specialism materials on the 22nd of January, but everything has to be uploaded to us by the 17th of May, because it's City and Guilds that undertake the marking of this rather than the centre themselves. But this next, if you could do a click to give the other half over. Obviously, it needs some careful planning about when you manage the assessments for the occupational specialism. But it's worth bearing in mind that if you've got any learners that are perhaps doing resits or for some reason have not fully completed the assessments for the core, or thinking about your time in all of this, there is a sort of an overlap with the core assessments as well. So you can see that the employer set project delivery window is between the 2nd of April and the 10th of May. So it fits within the occupational specialism window. So just something to bear in mind when you're planning your year ahead. Could you give me the next slide, Dom? Oh, I think I'm over to you. Do you want me to carry on, or are you happy to pick this up?
I'm happy to pick it up. It's absolutely fine. No problem.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so just going back to Karen's point previously, if you are using the autumn window in October, November as your first assessment for the core, then obviously you won't have sat any of the year one assessment yet. Obviously the key thing there is if a learner needs to resit the core ESP, then there will be overlap there to the OS assessment window, and so you've got to carefully manage or plan logistics of rooming, resources, etc. So something to be mindful of there. So the specialism follows a similar pattern to the employer set project. Each specialism is very similar or the same, in fact, in how they're assessed. So each will contain 60 marks. The window is slightly larger than the OS. The OS was, sorry, the ESP. The ESP was 25 hours. The OS is 32 hours. But of course, this is the only assessment for year two. So there's no theory exams at all to do with the OS at all. It's just the practical assessment that the learners will be sitting this year. So each of the OS is based on what we call performance outcomes, and each of those outcomes do have a weighting. The performance outcomes themselves have been broken down, and they look at the knowledge and the skills. So for instance, team leader, for instance, has been broken down. The performance outcomes for team leaders have been broken down into lead, manage, develop individuals. That will cover 25%. Build relationships with colleagues, that's 20%. Deliver core tasks, that's 20. Manage and implement projects is 20, and apply governance is 15. So you can see there how it's been broken down. Further to that, the next step, or within those performance outcomes, will be the further detail, more granular detail in what is expected to be achieved from the performance outcomes. So, of course, Karen mentioned the fact that these are externally set and externally marked, which means providers don't need to do any marking whatsoever. You just need to upload, and we will do the marking and moderating back here. So each OS is based on an overarching project brief, which has been validated in advance. And of course, there is a range of tasks within each OS assessment, and each task is mapped to the performance outcomes. Now, we have the mark scheme that we have reflects the individual POs. We've got that. It's available for you as centres. You can see a sample mark scheme on our website. So the easiest way to find that is if you went onto City and Guilds website, in the search bar, and typed our product code 8715, that would bring you straight to the management and admin qualification page. In there, under the documents tab, you will find the sample marking scheme, and the grade descriptors section within that will highlight what's required to achieve a pass, or otherwise known as like threshold competence, and it'll also look at distinction as well. The beauty of it is as well, it'll also go into general, it'll also show the general marking approach, which highlights the high level steps that we'll undertake, or we'll do, or rather the external marking team will do at City and Guilds. So I mentioned previously about the assessment and the grading, and it has been tweaked a little bit, and this might be new to you. You can see at the bottom there a revised grading table. So as I mentioned previously, when we opened the session, the OS in the second year is graded pass, merit and distinction, and not by A star to E. Not necessarily know the reason why, but it is pretty straightforward as to how to find the overall grade. So if you say a learner got a B in the core and a merit in the occupational specialism, you can marry the two together and you can see there that they would get a merit overall. Now, this is a revised table, and previously, if a learner got an E in the core, the maximum grade a learner could get was a pass across the bottom. This has changed, so where it's bold, these grades, have actually changed and improved, so they've gone up. So if a learner now in core gets an E, but manages to get a distinction in the OS, it now means that they can get a merit rather than a pass. And obviously, if a learner gets a D in the core and a merit in the OS, that now means that they get a merit rather than a pass. And if a learner achieves a C in the core, but a distinction in the OS, that now means that they will get a distinction overall. So that is positive news. It does mean that if a learner doesn't necessarily do as well in the first year as the second, there is still an opportunity to get a decent grade. Now, the assignments themselves, the assessment themselves, will be released to centres the week before the February window opens. Of course, naturally, your exams office will be required to maintain the security of those said assessments until that window opens, and each assessment will be released as and when it's planned to run. Of course, all assignments will be password protected, just for security reasons. Now, if a learner fails the occupational specialism, this is more problematic than if failing the OS, because obviously the specialism assessment window is at the very end of the second year, which means by the time they've completed the OS, they will have actually finished their 2 years within or on the qualification itself. which means it doesn't stop them from resitting, but it does mean that they would then have to resit in the autumn window, which means coming back into college, into school, into centre, etc. So probably important to note that and pass that information on to learners. Now, the occupational specialism itself. So I think we're going back to the specification here, and I've put a hyperlink there at the very bottom. Specification. This is taken from specification page 4, and it just gives a brief overview, really, of the content and the assessment of the 3 specialisms, and specifically this example is team leadership and management, and it shows what learners should be able to do and what they need to provide evidence against towards those performance outcomes. It's imperative that you read the specification from all the way through for your particular specialism to make sure that you understand before delivery, obviously. It's like many other qualifications, and in how that specification is broken down. You can see here, this is an example from business improvement. You can see we're working towards performance outcome 6, so monitor and report the implementation of business improvement activities. The learning outcome itself of PO6 is 1.31. That is the principles of monitoring the implementation of the outcomes of change initiatives. And of course, there's a range. So the range outlines the topic that needs to be delivered. What learners need to learn is the key. So the range must be delivered in full, but what do learners need to learn goes into a bit more of the granular detail. So it's to support delivery of the content in the criteria, and it basically highlights context in relation to the depth and the breadth of the subject area. Now, what we mustn't forget is to embed the core skills into delivery as well, and each part of the specification will highlight the core skills on the right-hand side in grey. So that's obviously English, maths, digital skills, etc. So please do make sure that these are mapped into delivery. Now, we're now going to address the elephant in the room, should we say, resources. Now, you were given a full set of schemes of work, PowerPoints, formative assessment, worksheets, etc. for year 1. Unfortunately, that's not the case for year 2. However, the good news is that the way the occupational specialisms were built, they have been mapped by IFATE to apprenticeship standards. So they are all aligning to relevant apprenticeship standards that are currently on offer to anybody in England at the moment. So when we say occupationally mapped to apprenticeship standards, it may or may not be the case that your centre, where you are delivering, has an apprenticeship team. If so, that's to your benefit. If not, it's not the end of the world. However, it might be slightly more difficult to find resources. So I just want to highlight here which standards are mapped to which occupational specialism. So if you're offering the business support specialism, this is being occupationally mapped to the level 3 business administrator apprenticeship, otherwise known as an EPA. Now, although we don't provide T-level resources directly associated to each OS, we do have knowledge-based resources for the apprenticeship standards. So for instance, we have a non-mandatory diploma, which the POS code for that is 3473, and that is directly linked to, it's called Business Administrator, and it's directly linked to the level 3 Business Administrator apprenticeship. Now, because they are mapped, that does mean that the knowledge content of the Business Administrator does naturally fit to the business support knowledge. So if you are looking for schemes of work, if you are looking for PowerPoints, etc., a non-mandatory diploma 3473 would be of use. Now, the downside to this is it's a purchasable resource. What I would suggest you do is put 3473 into our search bar on the City and Guilds website, have a look at the specification of 3473, and do a little bit of a mapping exercise first to see the knowledge elements of the business admin diploma and how they map across to the business support OS knowledge. The same can be said about leadership and management. So leadership and management OS directly maps to the team leader supervisor apprenticeship. And again, we do have resources available to purchase for team leader supervisor, only this time they are in the form of workbooks. Those cover the knowledge aspect of the standard as well. And those are broken down into outcomes or units, I believe. Karen, do you have a non-mandatory diploma for team leader supervisor or anything delivery facing as far as resources are concerned?
We have a diploma for the team leader standard. Obviously it's optional, but the workbooks mirror the units within there, within the qualification, and they're both designed to mirror the groupings under endpoint assessment. So they're not, so they're set out in quite a holistic way. But you know, as I say, the content is all there, but it aligns to the endpoint assessment, you know, rather than the T level specifically. But there's lots of synergies between the two.
Yeah, so they have been occupationally mapped. So the workbooks generally tend to be more learner facing. But if you've got a diploma, does that mean you have purchasable schemes of work for team leader supervisor?
No, we don't. No. This is where ILM differs quite significantly from the standard approach from City and Guilds. They are learner-facing workbooks. So no, nothing that sort of would mirror anything that we've produced for the core. So
just to reiterate then, there are delivery resources available for business support. There are learner-facing resources available for leadership and management, but unfortunately, we don't offer an apprenticeship standard in improvement technician, which is the one which is occupationally mapped to business improvement. However, that's not to say that other EPAOs don't. So there's nothing to stop you from going to other EPAOs and looking at their resources as well. If you're offering the business improvement, or indeed if you're offering either business support, leadership and management. Now, the first port of call for me would be, if you are lucky enough to have an apprenticeship team, to go and speak to them to see if they have resources already pre-built and in use for the OS that you're offering. And if so, a nice word in the ear to see if you can pinch those knowledge-based resources which would support you with delivery. If you're in the position where you don't have an apprenticeship team or you don't have any contacts around apprenticeships, then what you could do is speak to your regional City and Guilds business manager. It might be that they would be able to provide you access to, say, business support non-mandatory diploma resources for a trial period, say 24 hours or something. You could take a look for free to see if they are something that you would be interested in. And then if you are, then obviously you could go ahead and purchase those resources. So further resources, something that wasn't available for the core but is available this year for the occupational specialism is what we call GSEMs. The GSEMs stands for Guide Standard Exemplification Resources. These resources are free. They're on our website now, have been all year. And again, they sit under the qualification page 8715. So again, going back to the website, City and Guilds website, typing in 8715 and finding the qualification page, and it's under the Documents tab. There is a link on this slide deck, so you will get a copy of this slide deck. It will be put up onto our website along with the recording of this webinar. But essentially what they do is they highlight what a pass looks like, and they show examples of a distinction as well. And these are available for all three specialisms. So I wouldn't teach to this, but it's certainly a good piece of or good information to look at to make sure that you are aligning any formative assessment marking along with the GSEMs. And of course, along with the GSEMs, where those GSEMs fit, you'll also find the sample assessments as well. And these are again available for all three of the OS as well, along with the sample marking grid. So again, there's a link there on that page. It does sit under the same page again, 8715, and you will find candidate pack under the sample assessment. You'll find a sample center guidance pack, and of course the sample marking grid. I would download these to start with, share them with colleagues, etc., and make sure they're read from cover to cover. So that's the resources in a nutshell. What we're going to do now is open up to questions. So we're hoping that you've got lots of questions.
There are quite a few, Dom. I've got the questions open. So should I go through them? So I'm just going to take them in order. I think that's the best way to do it. So and we've got a bit of time, so we're fine. So Uzma, thank you for your question. She's saying, I'm not sure we'll be able to answer this, but maybe Dom, you know, why is the industry placement becoming 315 to 420 hours? I thought it was already that.
It's always been that, yeah.
Yeah. So Uzma, I don't know if you want to sort of expand on that, if that's not what so you're saying, has the DFE changed the industry placement hours? Not that we are aware of. Obviously, we're contracted around the technical qualification, so they wouldn't necessarily advise us if that change was was made, because that's outside of our jurisdiction. But I would say if it's the numbers you're quoting there, that's what we understand them to be. So so I'm not sure what the query is there. So Uzma, you've carried on with what if year 2 occupational specialism requires a resit? When would that be offered? So Dom, I think you covered that. Would you like to sort of recap on that one?
Yeah, sure. You probably asked the question, Uzma, before I got to that slide. The O2, the OS, sorry, in year 2 obviously is the last or the end assessment within the second year, but a learner can come back and complete a resit in the autumn window. There will be specifically a resit within the autumn window of the so that would be, what are we in, 23, so that would be autumn 24. So they would sit the first assessment in spring 24, and then they would have a potential resit in autumn 24 should they need.
Yes, I know I get my ears all mixed up and when we go through those, so thanks for that, Dom. So then a question from Caroline saying we can't see the performance outcomes. So they are contained within the specification, aren't they, Dom?
They were. I was just reading them off my notes as an example.
On the slide,
didn't want to bulk out the slides with too much information. So Caroline, they weren't on the slides. That was just me talking about them, but you can find them in much more detail in the specification, and probably far better put as well.
That's great. Leanna's asked a question about the resits, which we've already covered. So Uzma's come back to us about when would we be able to release the June 23 core exam papers for new cohorts to practice?
Okay, so the June 23, which have already been sat, will become sample papers the week after the results are released. So I'm guessing it's around the 14th of August, 17th of August, whatever that Thursday is, the A-level results are released. It's around the 14th to 17th of August normally. So the week after, we will publish, or rather, this is what has been done in the past. So each T level is in waves. We are in wave 3. What happened in wave 2 with our construction and building services T level is that they uploaded the paper to view the week after the results. So you should have them straight away for September. So by which time each new learner will have the sample already on the website, and they will have the live assessment that's just been sat as a sample this spring. And of course, for those then sitting, once the autumn window has been used as well, that then will become a sample probably around February, March, I believe, because that's when the results will be released for the autumn sittings as well.
Yeah, so they'll have probably 3 different samples, won't they, by the time they're getting to the revision stage? Yeah.
Yeah. So for those just starting this year in September, by the time they sit in June, they should have 3 sample papers to look at, of which 2 would have been live previously.
Okay, thank you for that. So Danielle has asked a question. Are the changes to the overall grades calculation for all future cohorts, or just for this first cohort?
That's a very good question, Danielle. And the honest answer is, I don't know. We presume it will stay as it is. So there's no reason why it would revert back to previous, because that would be an unfair advantage of anyone sitting it this year. So until we hear from iFate, that is the way it's graded, which is good news because obviously it's gone up. Yeah, it's a better setup for learners, isn't it? So yes, but at the moment we think that that's the way it will be going forward. So we'll just wait and see. Caroline has made a suggestion about the management e-workbooks that you were referring to, Dom. That we and she's very helpfully found the link on the ILM website, asking us to share the link so that people on this call will be able to see us, because what we've got on the website is a sample of what they look like and the sort of general overview of what they offer. So yes, Caroline, that's a really good idea. I don't know why we didn't think of it in the first place, but we will certainly do that and share that with the information when it comes out to you. Thank you for that suggestion. Sorry to interrupt, Karen. I'm just seeing that we've missed one out from Leanne. So Leanne, please don't take it personally. What the question Leanne's asked is, will there be an opportunity for students to resit their ESP in November or just in April, May? So yes, Leanne, a learner who sat their ESP this window in spring can resit in November or in April, May next year. And of course, if you sit in November and they fail again, they can then sit again in April, May if you wish. There's got to be extenuating circumstances there, surely, but absolutely any window that's open, a learner can resit in for as long as they want, but obviously that will incur resit costs, which obviously the centre needs to be aware of, and of course who pays for those resit costs.
Apologies, Leanne, that was whether I just saw resit and thought, oh, we've already covered that. I do apologise. That's entirely my fault. Thanks, Dom, for your eagle eyes there. So Esma's sort of saying she thought the IP, the industry placement hours, was 315. I think it's always had that range, Esma, as far as we're aware. So maybe have a look at the DFE website for clarification on that. Gemma has a question. It says, in the specification for business support, this is a very precise question. 2.1 states online software. We were talking about this last week, Dom, weren't we? Do you have an example of what this would cover?
Very good question, Gemma. In actual fact, we went back to our assessment and development team regarding the wording in the specification to do with specific software, because the leadership management software also states specific software, or rather software attributed to things like project management. Well, we've had confirmation since that there's actually no specific software at all required through any of the 3 occupational specialisms. So just use your common sense there. For instance, if it's project management, there's nothing to stop you using Excel, for instance. There's absolutely nothing at all specific about what needs to be used for the OS at all. So depending, I don't know what the task it's relating to online software, but I'm hoping that answers your question, but there's nothing specific that you must use. They've tried to keep it as simple as possible to stop centres incurring further costs to buy specific software. And of course, in industry, every industry or employer uses slightly different software, whether it's Access, Excel, Sage, anything really. So as long as the software that you use can do the job for delivery successfully, that's absolutely fine.
Yeah, and Gemma, that goes for all 3 of the occupational specialisms. So hopefully that's given you some thought there. So I guess this is one for me then, Dom. Will has asked the question, can we use level 3 CMI resources for leadership and management? So CMI is the Chartered Management Institute and is similar to ILM in their offer. They have lots of resources, Will, and not all of them have been specifically mapped to apprenticeship standards. So I think you would need to have a conversation with them to see how they align. But obviously they will cover the same topics. You know, they'll cover project management, they'll cover people, they'll cover communications. You would just be needing to contextualize them to the requirements for the T level. But I think it's worth a conversation with CMI if that's your preferred provider there. So we've got how are we doing for time? Have we
15 minutes left.
Oh, okay. So we've got a question here from apologies if I get your name incorrect, Kumbire. Can they do a core ESP refit in the October window? I think we've covered that one, haven't we?
Yes, they can. Yeah.
Yeah. How long the OS assessment window will be from the 5th of February 2024? Uzma, so I'm guessing
17th of May.
Yeah. So it's a 32-hour assessment that you will just pick up between those 2 dates. Natalie has asked, is there a City and Guilds code for the team leader supervisor qualification? Yeah, and I don't know what it is. Apologies for that, because I'm useless at numbers, but I will get that to you. But it will be on the ILM website rather than the City and Guilds website. Sits entirely separately. So again, we'll drop a link in there for you so that you can easily find it. So Sharon has asked, can you carry on teaching the OS after the window starts? Ooh. Go on, Dom.
It depends in what context you're asking the question, Sharon. Once you start the assessment, then obviously you must stop delivery. But there's nothing to stop you. You cannot view the assessment and continue teaching. But there's nothing to say that you must start on the 5th of Feb. You might have planned to start, say, the 5th of March, which gives you a further 4 weeks guided learning hours. So that's absolutely fine. Obviously, other centres that have started on the 5th of Feb must retain the security of the assessment anyway, so shouldn't be telling you anything that's about that OS. Obviously, there's a degree of trust there, and of course, we can't stop, say, a college next to another college and learners telling others what's in it. That is unfortunately just the way it is. But what I would say to your learners there is that it's obviously not good practice, etc. But there's nothing to stop you delivering up until, say, the 4th of March, and then starting the assessment. But once you start the assessment, you cannot continue to deliver. You can't look at the assessment pre-assessment window and then teach the bits that you've missed either. It must be a case of the assessment remains secure until assessment starts.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to be released. It's the same as if you think about exams. The exams are released to the centre so that they've got them in good time to release to the learners, but they shouldn't be looking at them and picking out any gaps that they've got. Thanks for that, Dom. Amanda is asking about what date will results day be, and I'm assuming it will be the same as for the core, won't it? It'll be which is the same day as A levels come out.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah,
we have a standard approach that all level 3 results are released on the same day. So
yeah, I don't know the exact date, but
yeah, mid-August, isn't it? It's a Thursday in August. So,
yes, it's the Thursday before GCSE results are released, and then normally 20-something of August. So anyway, between the 14th and 17th, something like, but that's an educated guess.
So George has asked, we are offering all 3 pathways. Wow, okay. Disappointing that there are no resources for business improvement. Any idea when you may have them? George, unfortunately, City and Guilds will not be producing any. It isn't within our remit to undertake that, unfortunately. So whilst we've incidentally got some for the other 2 occupational specialisms, they're not designed specifically for the T level. They are aligned to the apprenticeship standard, which of course the OS sort of aligns to as well. But I'm sorry, but we don't offer business improvement within City and Guilds, so there isn't even any incidental stuff that we will have available to you. I don't know, are you in a college at all, George? Do you have a part of the college that works with apprentices? That may be a route for you.
If not, George, you need to find an EPAO that does offer business improvement, and perhaps look at their offer around the resources that they may sell, which are linked to business improvement. Of course, this is very tenuous because you're buying resources for a standard rather than T levels, and then what you're having to do is to manipulate them to fit to the T level itself, the OS itself. So please do remember that for anybody actually looking at any of the OSs, that you will have to do some mapping, but it's better than nothing. But this is why I mentioned previously, perhaps speaking to your City and Guilds business manager to take a look first to see what's on offer for the non-mandatory diploma in business admin or the team leader workbooks, to see if they are fit for purpose first.
Great. And George, I'm impressed that you're offering all 3 pathways. That's going to be amazing. So Caroline, you've very helpfully said learners cannot resit the autumn 24 window due to government funding, as they would have completed their course period. So, as Don was saying, that there is an issue there about funding, isn't there? If they haven't managed to pass on that first occasion. So
yeah, not sure how the funding works there, if I'm honest, Caroline. It's not my remit or Karen's, but I understand what you're saying. It might be a case of the learner might need to pay for themselves. I'm unsure about the exact rules, but as far as I'm aware, the Wave 2 can resit in the autumn window if they fail the spring window of year 2. I'll take a deeper look into that and ask colleagues in Wave 2 to see if that is an issue, of course, with funding. It might be that the learner has to self-fund the resit, but I'm pretty sure they will still get an opportunity to resit should they wish.
Seems unreasonable, doesn't it? But yeah. Okay, Amanda has asked, does the OS need to be taken under exam conditions?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's I think it's a medium controlled assessment off the top of my head. I might be wrong there, but there is exam guidance. There is guidance about that. The occupational specialism guidance, it will highlight all of that. I think the management and admin one is due to be. It hasn't been released yet, but it's due to be released. I don't know when next year, but there will definitely be an OS. There's been one for Wave 2. A guide to OS for marking, for centres delivering, etc. So exactly the same will be delivered for, offered for management and admin as well. That will go through the criteria for the controlled assessment. But essentially, the ESP was medium controlled assessment, aligning to JCQ, etc. So the same will be for, I'm pretty sure the same will be for the OS as well.
Hopefully that clarifies, and it's a very thorough document when it comes out, Dom, isn't it? So
it is.
Should give you everything that you need. Leanna's come back to us to say, sorry, but I asked about students resitting their ESP rather than their OS. Will year 2 students have a chance to resit in October, November 23, so they don't have to resit at the same time as the OS window? And yes, absolutely, they can. So that would be their natural first resit opportunity, would be in the autumn series.
Again, that goes back to Caroline's point, doesn't it, about funding for the OS, the resit?
Yes, but I think Leanne was talking about they're in year 2 doing their OS, but they failed their ESP. In year 1. So yes, and obviously that gives you the challenge about you're trying to fit in potentially 620 guided learning hours between September and February, and you've got to give them the opportunity for a resit and time to revise for that as well. So it's all pretty tight there. So Sharon has asked, is the window open for us to plan like the ESP or set dates for the tasks? Sharon, it's like the ESP. So the window opens, you know, you can plan when you're going to do their timed assessments. There's certain hours allocated to each task. So you manage how you would do that across that time period. I hope that helps. What date was exam 2, please, from Stuart?
13th of June.
This year it was, wasn't it? Yeah. There were
and I think I need to get out more.
I thought mid-June. I wasn't prepared to come up with an exact date. Well done, Dom. Yeah, and yeah, I think you need to get out more. So Benjamin has asked, are the scheme of works available for the occupational specialisms? Unfortunately, Benjamin, we haven't got any and we won't be producing any. We did produce them for the core, but as Dom was explaining under the resources section of the webinar, it isn't something that we will be producing. So I don't know how we're getting down this list. Danielle has asked, will you release another sample for the occupational specialisms before summer 2024? It will be very difficult with only one sample in year 1.
Summer 24, no. No, we will not. No, unfortunately not. So summer 24 will be the first chance of sitting the occupational specialism. So you've only got the sample available on the website, but you have got the G7s as well. Obviously, for those as the qualification progresses, you will get obviously the autumn series, and then the next summer 25 as well. But unfortunately, Danielle, no, there won't be another OS sample before summer 24.
Okay, Aaron has asked, hi Aaron, how you doing? He's saying hi to us both. So please just clarify again, as we've heard conflicting responses, students can resit ESP and exams in November 23 and June 24, so have 3 opportunities in total. So
hi Aaron, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, nice to see you on, Aaron. Absolutely, yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. The issue you've got there is, of course, the costings. Who's going to pay for resit 1 and then resit 2? And if they're actually needing a resit 2, why is that? Is it extenuating circumstances, but or are they just simply struggling? That would be the bigger question for me. But yes, you can use any assessment window to resit that's available for any of the assessments. You don't have to use the November one, for instance. You can, if you fail the ESP this year in spring 23, you don't have to use the first one. You can wait till spring 24 if you wish, but obviously there's a bit of danger attached to that as well.
Thanks, Aaron. Sorry, thank you for asking, Aaron. So, I've lost my place now, just as we're getting up to 3 o'clock. I think we've got Melissa next. If students need to resit the ESP in the November window, who should make up the other students taking part in the collaborative discussion aspect? If, for example, there is just one student resitting, I think it's a real challenge.
It is a real challenge, yeah. That would have to be discussed on a case-by-case situation, but it might be that you have to bring in members of staff to drive that discussion. But if that does happen, do get in touch with us, because we'd need to seek clarification. But obviously, we can't disadvantage the learner by not having that group discussion. So obviously, whatever a teacher would discuss wouldn't be assessed, and obviously couldn't be supportive in any way to the learner. But we'd need to find further information on that, and probably do on a case-by-case scenario.
Yeah, I think a good answer, Dom. Louise has asked, is there an earlier date for results for the November resit?
Yeah, I believe it's February, March.
Yeah, we don't have a date.
Don't have specific dates,
no. Yeah, okay. Caroline is asking, is City and Guilds going to look at the ESP release date? As the learners starting on the 1st of April will have a week's worth of assessment before their Easter break. Okay, we have had this come up in the previously. This will allow them to revise, research the industry and organisation type after having a week in their assessment, giving them an unfair advantage. This is hard on centres who have to start on the 15th of April.
No, I don't think we are. You are, because of the Easter break, obviously the window is bigger. I appreciate it's not about the time frame, but actually they're not graded on the research of the industry at all. So that you shouldn't really have much bearing on what's actually being marked. So no, we did ask the question to assessment, and it wasn't seen as an advantage, because the research into the industry itself is not graded at all. In fact, the industry could be about anything. The sector could be anything. It's not the issue. It's the evidence that's generated off the back. So, for instance, the paid cost-benefit analysis, etc. It's the results from that. So it's very unlikely that it would be reviewed.
Yeah, I agree. So we are out of time. So Dom, if we carry on answering the questions, we appreciate, guys, if you need to drop off. But if we carry on with the recording and answer the questions, because I think we're almost there, then when you get the recording, you'll have the answer to all the questions. Are you okay for time, Dom?
Yep, no problem. There's only 2 or 3 left anyway, I think.
Yeah. So Caroline, very helpfully, you've given the precise dates for the papers. So thank you for sharing that. I think you should come and work at City and Guilds, Caroline. You've got a lot of knowledge there. So Pablo has asked, do you know when City and Guilds will release the occupational specialism textbooks?
Ooh.
So
I think might be a bit wishful thinking that, Pablo, because essentially there will be no OS textbooks. It was very difficult getting a textbook from Hodder around the core, so the chances of them producing 3 more for the management and admin is slim to none. And actually management and admin has only 3 specialisms. Some of the other sectors in T level, such as engineering, construction, have much more, and there's no textbooks for those either. So it's very unlikely that an external publications company, bearing in mind the textbook that's come out is not City and Guilds, it's Hodder, endorsed by City and Guilds. So we haven't produced it ourselves. It's an external company. There's nothing on the radar at all for it to support with a textbook for each of the specialisms. So unfortunately, no, that won't happen.
Okay. Question from Uzma. Would the breakup of results reflect? Oh, I'm not sure I understand the question. Can you see it, Dom? Would the breakup of
results reflect if the students passed the SP or core better than the others? I'd need clarification there, Uzma. I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
If you could come back to us, Uzma, that would be good. Beverly has left, so where are we at? I think that's all the questions, isn't it?
Yeah. Jonathan has made a statement. Generally, course run through until June. Is the expectation that students will complete 620 hours by March, then finish? Not necessarily, Jonathan. No, because the assessment will finish, but they may need to do industry placement, and it depends how you've planned it. So a lot of centres are planning industry placement as at the end of term. So they would finish the OS assessment window in April, May, because they have up to May 17th. Is it May 17th? February to May 17th? Yes. Yeah. And then what they would do is they would finish their industry placement, and that then will be the end of the T level qualification. Yeah.
Okay. So Caroline is asking about, are we taking any feedback from centres on the ESP submission from exams? We've had a lot of requests that could have been made clearer prior to the ESP starting this year. So yeah, absolutely, Caroline. If your exams team have got anything that we could have made simpler, then we would absolutely be happy to hear it and try and make those that process much simpler for you in the future.
Caroline, if you want to ask your exams team to build up that feedback and then you perhaps email it to myself or Karen, I can then forward it on to our technicals quality team, and they can then take a look and look at making any amendments that would help centres.
Okay. Uzma's asking, would we provide a breakdown of the results in terms of the ESP and the core?
Yes, that's right. You will get a core result and an ESP result, and then an overall year 1 result. That combined with the year 2 result will then map on the table that we showed previously to give you the overall grade of the TQ.
Okay. And Kumbire has come back to us about the lack of resources, and he's asking, well, why are no resources being made available? It is difficult for us to share this with you, Cumberay, and I know all of you on this call and ourselves will be disappointed that they're not available for you. We work to the contract. We've been asked by IFATE to deliver this, and we have that constraint. The capacity of City and Guilds to be able to prepare these resources is limited, and so we are just unable to provide them for you. We've covered this throughout the webinar today in the slides and through the questions, and I do understand your frustration, but we don't want you to, we want to be clear with you, and we don't want you to think that we might do them, because the answer that we've had back from the business is that we're not able to provide them. So we need to be clear with you that to gain the resources you need to be looking outside of City and Guilds, or adapting resources that we have got that are really designed for apprenticeships. So sorry, I know that's not the answer that you wanted, and we do appreciate the frustration that is for you. And I think that's it.
Yeah, Caroline makes a point. We'll make this the last one. In fact, it is the last one anyway. Caroline said she got feedback from learners on how they feel about the course and its delivery, the setup of ESP tasks, etc. That would be fantastic, Caroline. If you could forward it, that would be great. We'll take that on board and send it off to assessment and development. Every little helps to try and improve. And then, when will OS moderation take place? Not sure what you mean there, Caroline. You mean the moderating of the assessment decisions?
Within City and Guilds?
Within City and Guilds, as an internal moderation within City and Guilds? You mean as a centre?
Oh, I see. Right. You're not moderated specifically against the assessments, because we do the assessments and we moderate it within City and Guilds. I'm not sure I've understood. I wonder if we've misunderstood the question.
Maybe. You won't get a moderator visit or anything like that, because you don't do any summative assessment. So that no, unless you change your occupational specialism or something changes as far as staffing is concerned, it might be that quality get in touch with you to reapprove if something changes, but no, as far as we're concerned, because of the external management and admin T level is quite unique in that it's one of very few T levels that is externally assessed throughout the whole qualification, throughout the whole TQ, hence no reason, and hence no reason why you would get moderated, because we do the marking.
Okay. Right, so just to clarify with Cumberay, I will be sending the links through to the ILM resources when we send the information out to you, so we will definitely be doing that. I think we've come to the end. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. We've some challenging questions there, and sometimes I know we haven't given you the answer that you'd have hoped for, but we'd rather be much clearer and honest with you, particularly around the resources. And thank you for your time today. Anything to add, Dom?
No, just echo what you said, Karen. Many thanks for attending, and keep in touch. Have a good week.
Thank you.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
all. Bye.